CultPop. All right, let's move on to the book club section of the show where we talk about Eternals from Neil Gaiman and art by John Romita Jr. During the 1970s, comics legend Jack King Kirby returned to the House of Ideas with perhaps his biggest idea of all, the universe of the Eternals. Their creation was the result of Kirby's ceaseless curiosity about the origin of man and his mythologies. But, like many of the King's concepts, it was definitely ahead of its time. Flash forward to 2006, superstar creators Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. have boldly taken on these concepts with a loving hand. In the process, telling a fresh and crackling fun yarn full of mystery, suspense, and majestic power, all with an eye on helping establish Kirby's creations as a vital part of the Marvel Universe once and for all. Against the backdrop of Marvel's Civil War, the Eternals are awakening one by one from a strange waking dream, at once coming to terms with the fact that they are far more than the normal people they have thought themselves to be. They find there is little time to commiserate about such things, however, as they are thrust into a life and death struggle that spans both time and space.
Wow.
So, because it's coming out from Marvel as a movie in the next, I guess, decade, who knows when movies are going to start happening again, we decided to take a look at this because I personally don't know anything about the Eternals. And I was surprised to find that would be one of their next blockbuster films. So, seemed like a good time to check it out. My personal take is that this was fine. I didn't care. I was kind of bored. Not much actually seems to happen in the story other than you've got these characters who are human and they find out that they are previously gods, these Eternals who were created by the Celestials in the Marvel Universe to protect the planet. And, you know, one by one, they're waking up and they have to go up against the, what are the bad guys called?
The Deviants.
Deviants. Yeah. The Celestials made the 100 Eternals and then thousands of Deviants. And they've been going to war for who knows how long. And there's an interesting twist in here where we find out why they have been sort of trapped in the bodies of humans. And that was kind of interesting for a couple of pages. And then it was over. And I was glad to be done with it. I was really expecting more from Neil Gaiman. What did you think, Pink?
I really should... All I'm going to do is take a chainsaw to this book. I hated it on every level for multiple reasons, so you probably should skip me.
No, tell us why.
Yeah, what do you think?
Go. Awful. It was like, you hear the joke some people make about baseball. It's 30 minutes of action jam-packed into 2 hours.
Yeah.
This book was like 30 pages of kind of a story jam-packed into however many pages it was. It was so boring. The art was so bad. The writing was so awful. Like, well, you should go out with him. He's rich. You know, the men with tits writing coming out of the female characters. It was just, I hated this book on every level. It was awful. It was, and it really has given me serious concern for, whereas before, because the only exposure I've had to the Eternals before was the original. What it ran? 2 years? I think not even 2 years.
I don't even think 2 years.
Yeah. It's enough to be in. There was like enough material to do like one omnibus because I think it just came out or is about to come out. But yeah, like it's not long runs. They did not have a long life in publication.
But it was enough to provoke the imagination, and I would think, wow, what you could do in a movie with that. I was a naysayer when they were going to make Guardians of the Galaxy into a movie. I thought this isn't going to work.
Same.
There's no way Guardians of the Galaxy is going to work. Nobody's going to care.
I wasn't. I cared.
They don't have the name brand like Captain America or the Avengers to carry them. But I was wrong. So I'm hoping I'm also going to be wrong with the Eternals. But God, this book felt like it came out in the early 80s. It felt like a bad book that came out in the mid 80s maybe, and it came out 12 years ago.
You know what? You just hit it right on the head, Pink, because the
Awesome.
whole time I was reading this, because I knew it was an older book. So in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm trying to give it some pass because,
Give it some
this
slack.
book,
Yeah.
because it probably was written like in the late 90s or something like that. But then when I realized that this was still 2007, I'm like, oh my God, this is first of all, okay, like Brandon wanted you to go off, Pink, and I know you will go off now that he's giving you a license, but allow me to go off a little bit first. Because first of all, when I pick up a book or put it on my pad and it says that there are 231 pages, then to me, I better be getting a complete fucking story, right? So when I get to the end of this 231 fucking page book, for it only to set up basically the next issue of what should have really been compressed down into one 64-page book. I am like, yo, this is total bullshit. The art is not bad. It's John Romita Jr. probably at the height of his stylistic time and probably at the best point of his stylistic moment, and it has a little bit of the best of Frank Miller comes through to me. So it's not bad, it's not great, I'll give you that, but the story is boring, it's padded, it goes on and on and on. The dialogue is stilted. There is absolutely no personality. There are points in the story that don't make no fucking sense. I don't give a fuck about any one of these motherfucking characters. The first person that comes into the book that I even give a fuck about is Yellow Jacket, and that's not until the last two fucking books, and even then he's only on fucking 2 pages. The little back and forth between him and Jan was great. Other than that, I didn't give a fuck. Tony Stark is in here. He's kind of cool, but then they run him into the ground, and then he sits there like he's just checking it out. This is bullshit. This was dumb. This was a dumb waste of a book club moment. I don't know who suggested it. I don't know who read it and enjoyed it. And God bless you if you did, but you are people that I have to question your intelligence, because this book is boring, dumb, dull, and leads to nothing. And if you believe that reading 231 pages of a book and not getting to the end of the fucking story is good writing, then shame on you. And shame on Neil Gaiman, who did 1602, which was a great book, a fantastic book. Shame on him for writing this piece of shit and saying that it is an homage to Jack Kirby. Because while Jack Kirby wasn't the greatest writer in the world, he did have fantastic, wild, imaginative ideas. And outside of the tapestry and the same title, none of that is on display in this book to me.
There's only one time that I was enjoying what was happening, and it's literally when Iron Man comes bursting through the wall like that. With he's not making an action pose. He's literally just
walking through.
He's just sliding himself through the building without really he's not posing. He's not flexing. He's not flying in like this. He's just like, boosh, I'm here. That's the only time I was like, oh, that's pretty dope.
It's a cool, frozen in time moment too.
Yeah,
where
this
you
is
see
really
wall.
well illustrated, I think.
I'm the one that suggested this. I had never read it, so I didn't. I also thought it was boring as shit. But I a couple things. Absorbing everything that you guys are saying, and I'm not in disagreement at all. Comparing it though to Guardians, I also don't think is necessarily even fair. When it comes to finding out that this is the next movie they're going to do, right? With Guardians, there was at least 2 or 3, there was at least a current run that was highly regarded that people could nerds can hold on to. This is the thing that they keep trying to make work.
Yeah. And
it's just not. And I had also heard that they were for the movie. I trust who's making the movie, and the cast is awesome. So, it's hopefully it's going to be good. But I heard that they were also using this as like a reference point for the movie. This
Oh my God.
series. So I was like, hey, it would be kind of cool if we read this. And then nobody's really read it. It's Neil Gaiman. It's got creators' names that are highly regarded. It's going to become more popular, at least in understanding and knowledge over the next year. Why not? And I was super disappointed. It was crazy boring. It was for as long as it took to do anything, it explained absolutely nothing. Like even the explanations of things were so like ethereal that it pissed me off. Like I read everything in here, but I still don't know what the fuck the Eternals are, what they do, or how they function, other than they protect the planet. And the deviants. Oh yeah. Sorry, some of them have powers. And the deviants, I guess, are just a fuel or like food for the Celestials. That's why there's billions of them.
Yeah. Basically, the Celestials in the past have been set up as amoral, and that's kind of looks like how they've carried it forward into this one, because the Celestials created the Eternals, and the Deviants or Changelings, however you want to see it, and their amoral nature of why they create what they create, and then the nonsensical nature of coming back for judgment later for what? Who knows? Since they're amoral and have no code or like to follow. I don't understand that. But
yeah, also too having the two factions or creating the two factions, the Deviants and the Eternals, it's one to protect the Earth and one to facilitate a food source for them when they do come back. But the Eternals are there to protect the Earth from the Deviants running it over before they can come and just like eat all them bitches. So it's this weird like food chain thing, I guess.
Oh, I didn't get that.
I'm not entirely sure that is accurate either. There were some.
I'm not entirely sure it's accurate either.
I mean, not your read of it, but what they said. Like there were some characters that disagreed with each other about like why they were created or what what the real story was. And so I don't know if that is the case or not. I'm not sure about that. It took me a week and a half to read this because I kept putting it down and I only read a chapter at a time because it was so very boring. And the way that it was structured too was really upsetting. Like it was 5 issues of a lot of setup. And then you roll into the 6th chapter and it's like, okay, things are coming to a head. Maybe they're just going to like bow it all up and it'll be kind of cool. It was the most anticlimactic battle ever because it was just like mind control. Hey guys, stop. We're cool now.
Yeah.
Celestial. And then it ends. And then the 7th issue was just like conflict jam-packed into this shit. Like, oh, we're going to introduce this entire hierarchy horde of deviants in a page, and that Makari is actually a reincarnated god.
What?
It's
go ahead.
The whole story is their way of hanging on to all the continuity that came before, but doing a reset, reboot, and I guess it works for that. But to connect back what you're talking to earlier about. You're talking about Dr. Manhattan and how once you reach an elevated state of power, by the nature of psychology of power, the more powerful you become, the less concerned you are of the common people or the common experience specifically. And I can forgive like hazy, vague background origins or information. I can just kind of let that go depending on the context. But ultimately, the goals of this villain, who has been around for 1,000,000 years, is he set everybody up to betray them so that he could get chicks. Literally.
You're talking about Sprite.
Wait, what was that?
I'm not even talking about Sprite yet. No, he wanted puberty. That's why he betrayed everything he's ever.
Literally used the word chicks.
He just said chicks.
I'm not even talking about that yet. I'm talking about this deviant or the deviant war thing with them understanding or believing that Makari is this Skadrak messiah or god of theirs, which is something that's introduced in the 7th issue.
or the end of the 6th.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Am I supposed to like? I need a flow chart for how like it's so boring. I need a flow chart to understand where I'm going because it was.
So I had a different opinion about this book, you guys. I enjoyed it. I read it when it came out, and I was like, this is pretty boring, and I'm not super into it. But I really wanted to be because I love the Eternals, and Neil Gaiman is great, in my opinion. John Romita is an artist that I feel like is very good, but I'm not really that into, you know? I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy. So maybe having already read the full story, not been super into it, going back and reading it all at once, I was like, oh, this is fun. I like it. I don't disagree. At the end, I was like, oh, I really want to know that. Like, cool setup. I want to know that story. They did come out with it. I remember reading it, and it wasn't. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was the Knopfs and Daniel Acuna.
Yeah.
It was only like 10 issues.
Yeah, it didn't really grab me, as I recall.
And I do remember in like Marvel Universe continuity, the Celestial being a part of Central Park now.
I had forgotten.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Happened. So I like. It is not the most action-packed thing, but I guess I was into enough of the, I like super ancient history, mythology. Like, for instance, when Ike Harris is telling Mark Curry, he's like, oh, you were Osiris. You brought words to the Egyptians. And I was like, that wasn't Osiris. That was Thoth. Why would Neil Gaiman get that wrong? And then later in the book, he's like, oh, yeah, Icarus got that wrong. You were actually Thoth. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a nice little fun thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry that you guys weren't into it. I thought the whole like sprite thing, that was cool. And the grandeur of everything. You raised some good points about why did they create the Deviants or Changeling or whatever they call themselves, which is cool that they make that distinction. Why would they call themselves Deviants?
I know you didn't mean this in this way, but can I like a distinction?
Yeah.
I don't need action. I need progress.
Sure,
Yes.
sure.
There
sure.
was no progress. I don't
Yes.
need explosions and punches. I need story
Yes.
progression, and there was none, and that bothered me.
Oh,
You guys
I
have
guess I thought there was.
You guys have mentioned before how you in general, you guys have mentioned before how you prefer when books have a balance. They've got to have, you know what I mean? I'm actually okay with pure talky all the way through without a punch being thrown, but God, it's got to be interesting dialogue, and this was just,
Agreed.
Yeah,
There's got to be dialogue that moves the story along, or because
When every character is stoic, this is what.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that just didn't bother me. That I do sometimes have a soft spot for that kind of like, we have been around for a million years. Your struggles are so distant to us that we don't register you kind of thing. That mindset is interesting to me. But also, having read it before, I remembered what happened with Icarus. So I was just like, ooh, that's a cool progression. Let's see what happens. Good. Sorry.
There were, I said there was only one part that I was impressed by. There was two other parts that I could remember that I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Basically, one of the, God damn it, the changing people is, holding someone hostage, holding the kid hostage. He's getting ready to eat him. And then Cersei goes, there, the monster's a tree. Easy peasy. And I like that she just like snaps her fingers and turns him into a tree. I thought that was pretty funny. And then later on, I think the main character, who I don't care enough to remember the name of, is talking to Giant Man. And he's basically like, they show up ready to fight. And so he flies up and he's like, listen, there's a whole thing going on. Why don't you, instead of us fighting, how about if you just hang back for a minute? And he goes, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, wow, we never see that in mainstream comics. And then later he's doing it again. He goes, you're doing some sort of mind thing on me, aren't you? And he goes, yeah. And it's just like, I thought those were like clever little bits of dialogue.
I liked those parts a lot. I was also impressed with the 7th issue climax with the Sprite storyline. I was like, oh shit. Okay. Yeah. Like that was the only time in the entire book that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
I'll give you,
it came quite late.
There was like 4 or 5 really interesting pages out of the 230 pages that was there.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to give those 5 pages their due.
Oh, also,
Kelly,
what the fuck is the Unimind?
Oh, the Unimind. See, that's the other thing. I've always liked the Eternals, and the Unimind is a very weird Kirby-ish concept where they can, if there are 3 or more Eternals, they can join together in this like entity that is the Unimind. And
Well,
You know, like both.
Thank God they explained it in this story.
it was also pretty
At all.
important to the climax of like that Sprite formed a Unimind with the Celestials and all that stuff. I can't fault anyone for not already knowing what the Unimind is. You know what I mean?
I mean,
Yeah.
they talk about it like, no, you're the asshole for not understanding what happened before. Like,
Right. Yeah,
this
they-
is a reboot after 30 years of no publication.
Right.
Give me something.
It's
I
also a
don't
very
know.
strange concept. Like you've got the Eternals who each have their own abilities, but separate from that, they can all, you know.
I felt like, God.
What?
I'm getting riled up. I felt like I needed an appendices of references in order to even barely understand or enjoy what the fuck was happening in this.
Well, the problem is that they couldn't properly reference it because what it is, actually, the Unimind is Kirby cribbing from himself because it's him taking his forever people from DC that used to join together to create, I forget, they created like some big Unicron looking type of creature and everything like that. So that they can't put a reference. Oh, see DC's forever people, so that you can know exactly what the Unimind is.
Yeah.
You know what was
You've got-
perfect in this book?
Mm.
And I like while reading it, I was just like, God, I fucking love this. All the lettering was amazing.
Ah, excellent.
Even the way that they did languages in a different
Yeah.
font with that, like all the lettering was fucking awesome. Because I
really
loved
love-
speaking Russian, right?
I love the way they were doing the Russian font.
Yeah.
I was like, that's clever, that's great. And then as the book went on, I'm like, okay, it's getting hard to read now. You know?
That's true. That's because your eyes were glazing over. That's why.
Yeah. If it was more interesting to read, I don't think it would be that much of a barrier.
Would
Yeah,
you guys
But
reactions? It seems like it would be the kind of thing that would tickle you folks. The reactions of the kind of tourists and everybody to the Celestial at the end. You
I
know,
buy it.
Yeah.
it does seem kind of like, yeah. All right, very good.
I
bought it.
like the dummies not understanding that a rare metal is probably more valuable than gold. I thought was hilarious.
Right.
But again,
I'm also a sucker for a Messiah story too. Not that this was one, but it introduces one, and I was like, "Oh, Makari, he's got an extra thing going on. Let's see what he's got."
Oh, yeah. What's the extra thing? That's my point. What's the extra thing?
well,
Because a deviant calls him by a name and says, "Oh, you are him." Well,
no, I mean, I
what
think
the
it's
fuck is
also
that?
the Celestial has done something. Like he said,
Oh, he speaks with it now, right?
he speaks with it now, and he included the Celestial, like when the Eternals were being created, this particular Celestial included some extra stuff in Makari that we don't know. So I think the intent was going forward to shift it as like Makari is the main character, Icarus is his friend as they go around getting the Eternals,
So-
but it just didn't take off.
Did Len? Did you or in general? Did you guys read the first arc of Jason Aaron's Avengers run? Because I'm just going to keep bringing this run up apparently today.
Apparently. Is that the one that is?
It's the final host or the first host.
I do.
Yeah.
I just finished reading that book.
Yeah, like it gets into it almost retcons some of the stuff. The human race itself is
Mhm.
a disease of the first sick host. So like a sick celestial
Mm.
sneezed
Hmm.
and created human beings, and that kind of became part of the whole like celestials, deviants, and then humans in the middle. And we're literally a disease on the universe, a celestial's disease. And I thought that was even more fun.
That was
than
more.
this.
That was more fun. That's a book that I don't think Brian would like either, because of you want to talk about murky artwork. The book in the artwork in that is very murky. But back on this, another story bit we didn't like. You talked about the Mark Curry character or whatever. The whole who was the guy that took over the fake land? Druid or whatever, however you said his name.
Oh yeah.
Druid.
You feel like there's this whole setup that's being made where there's going to be a butting of heads between him and the Icarus character, or maybe him and somebody of the Eternals, right? Because he seems to be like the Dark Eternal, and he more or less calls himself like the Dark Eternal. But when he shows up, he pretty much, hey guys. And now he's just Reggie Mantle in the Archie crew, who's just hanging out there and just making bad puns behind the scenes.
I think this is one of those situations where it's one of those like court intrigue kind of scenarios where they're all together, but he works against them, but they're all still Eternals. They have a certain, and they've like made a deal now where he can do his own thing. And I think he's done this before. I think it's one of those deals. This book really is setting up an Eternals ongoing status quo, but it seems as though it's an Eternals graphic novel because that's how they market and sell it. And the status quo never took off. So, like this is it, really.
Yeah. I wonder what happened. I wonder if the sales on this book weren't that great, or if it was just that the follow-up wasn't.
I remember reading the follow-up and not being like real excited about it ever. And
I remember this being hella late too. So it's not like it had any momentum ever. Yeah. And even the way that it's written, there's no momentum. So shit, if there was 3 months in between issues 3 and 4, I sure as shit wouldn't remember.
I know there's a new one coming from Kieran Gillan, new Eternal series with art by Asad Ribic. So, I mean, I'm not writing off the Eternals as a property just yet. Maybe this Kieran Gillan run will be the injection it needs, but this certainly wasn't it for me. I was very curious. I remember trying to read the first issue when it first came out in issues, and I didn't care, so I didn't continue with it. But I thought, oh, you know what, Neil Gaiman, I've got a better appreciation for Neil Gaiman now than I used to. Maybe this will be it, and boy, it sure wasn't.
I know this is not greatest of Neil Gaiman either.
What?
This is not greatest of Neil Gaiman either. No. Like, by any means. Yeah.
Brandon says, I agree with Brian, and I felt the same way about Sandman. This isn't an excuse, but maybe Gaiman books are just better on a second read. And Samuel David says, I also agree with Brian. I did read it more than once.
We've talked about this before. I genuinely hate that conceit. Like you need to experience it 5 times before you really get it. Like I don't like that.
That's just
if somebody has to convince me to like something, even if if I'm convincing myself to like something, something's wrong. Like
I get that it like reveals layers of itself on further readings. That's great, but the first reading being impenetrable, it's a problem, and I don't have the patience.
I also think that is a point of like. First of all, I disagree about Sandman. I've only read it once, and I think it's amazing. But that is also no author is like, well, I'm really going to get them on the second read.
No, like, I know.
They're going for it. And no reader is like, well, I can't say no readers like this, but if you happen to read it a second time and you enjoy it more, to say so is not like, what are you going to do? It's better on the second read. You know what I mean?
No, as an anecdotal experience, I enjoyed it more the second time is great. As fuel to get someone to keep going and or repeat, it's false. It's silly. The same thing with, I feel the same way about like, you should try this TV show. It gets really good in the 4th season. Like, why the fuck would I waste 4 seasons?
But
on time
to say like, hey, start with season 4.
I'm sorry, what Pink?
If it's contextual to your development or where you're at, like I've seen things when I was a kid or a teen that I've seen now decades later and I view very differently just because of age and experience, but that aside, the Eternals kind of acted as a sort of unwarranted bedrock to my sense of wonder for the Marvel Universe, probably disproportionately. Somehow they just tapped into that weird sense of, like they talk about, Chariots of the Gods kind of, what if mythology that's always been there. That's, wow, that would be so cool. And that's always kind of hovered in my mind as far as the Marvel Universe goes. I've always been fascinated by it, probably in like an unjustifiable way. And so when I went into this, I was excited and just, I hope they don't fuck it up again, you know.
Well, you know what? I honestly too, like if you think about the relaunch with Kieran Gillan, if you think about the things that he's written or the types of stories he's written before that go hard sci-fi, but also just in equal measure go full supernatural or magic based, maybe that's the sweet spot for Eternals. Some sort of sense in the middle of all those things. But I'm definitely taking a wait and see approach. Like I like the concepts and the ideas of these characters, but as an entry point, this I very much didn't like it.
Well, I think it's largely might just be like a force fit issue. Like toward the end, I felt like just seeing Iron Man and everything, just it's like cramming Watchmen into the DC universe. You know, they did not want the Eternals. They crammed the Eternals into the Marvel universe, you know, so it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, Kirby wanted it to be separate, and then they wanted him to include the Hulk. And just for anyone who might not know, that they wanted him to include the Hulk, and he didn't want to, so he did, but it was a Hulk robot that just looked like the Marvel Comics character Hulk. And then eventually it was like, oh yeah, they're in the Marvel universe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
a baller move.
Was them giving the double middles.
Right.
I never heard that. I like that, the double middles. That's great. Did anybody have any last words to say about the Eternals?
Give it a shot, everybody. It's pretty great.
The concept is great. You know, I don't think that this has any bearing on future Eternals stuff.
I just think this is like it wasn't the most enjoyable execution, but I don't think any of the pieces are broken. Neil Gaiman isn't shit. John Romita Jr. isn't garbage. The Eternals aren't broken. It's just this. This was not a very good sum of all its parts.
Yeah,
man, I've got to be honest with you. I haven't read any of or seen any of their other stuff, but the writing in this book and the artwork in this book, I am dumbfounded that they're considered giants.
Have you not read any Neil Gaiman?
No. And after this book, you'd almost have to hold a gun to my head to read anything else.
Damn!
You're very
Damn!
I would not take this is late comics Neil Gaiman, like 20 years after the stuff that everyone references as the greatest of Neil Gaiman things. Okay. You know,
I mean, I get it, right? Like, just as an example, like I adore George Romero. Early George Romero, but later George Romero was awful. Sure. So I get it.
Those last two movies were garbage.
Yeah. The Island of the Dead, or god damn it,
Diary of the Dead, and those like Land of the Dead was it was pretty good. Actually, it was better.
I would give this writer another chance, whatever you guys would recommend. But this art was just awful. Awful. I don't know. I don't get what the appeal is. I just don't.
Well, in fairness, and I might be having my timeline off a little bit because I think 1602 was about, I think like around 2002, 2003, something like that.
It was before this.
Oh, right. It was before. It definitely was before this. But if I remember correctly, Neil Gaiman was in a long time in this this legal dispute over his participation in the British Miracle Man comic book. And I think he also had some kind of legal dispute with Todd McFarlane too over the Angela character. Yeah. And if I remember, I might be conflating the stories a little bit. When he did 1602, part of that deal was that Marvel was going to be helping him with one or both of those legal issues. And 1602 was kind of like, all right, his way of kind of like paying back for them helping him with the legal fees for this. And I wouldn't be surprised if him continuing to play around in the Marvel toy box a little bit after that is also a part of him still kind of like paying off that debt a little bit. Doesn't mean that he didn't really enjoy the Eternals, Jack Kirby and everything like that. But I say that to say, like, I don't think he was giving it his all. I think he was basically, just having some fun. I think if you've never read Neil Gaiman, everybody praises his Sandman. I think it is some pretty good stuff, but to be fair, I didn't read it. I thought 1602 was good. His Miracle Man work was pretty good. I have known, and to be fair, some of his actual novels that he's written I've read some excerpts from them, and they actually read very well. So I want to invite you, Pete, to at least give him a try on that level. John Romita, I could care less of whether he likes it or not. And like he's like whatever the fuck, he's a dime a dozen as far as artists are concerned to me. But his father, on the other hand, is a different story.
Yeah,
but
I like his Spider-Man stuff.
I liked his JMS Spider-Man stuff. That's kind of
yeah. But how long ago was that?
20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So
he had kind of an odd blockiness and facial qualities. You bring up a good point about Gaiman, though. He had become a novelist for a while before he wrote Eternals. And we've talked about the difficulty in transition from people who start out as novelists and then go to comics. And I think it happens, like you get used to one style or whatever. And I don't think any of Gaiman's best stuff is superhero or sci-fi. Like his best of it, it's all like fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
And this is sci-fi superhero stuff. Yeah. So,
Pink, you may have seen a couple of his works have been turned into movies. Coraline, it was like a.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Kind of a. It's an animated. It's like a
stop motion
animated along the lines of like Nightmare Before Christmas. And then there was Stardust, which is
I like Stardust.
That's based off of his novel Stardust.
I have the book. It's actually quite good.
Yeah, we did that for a book club at a local bookshop.
You're talking about the one with Michelle Pfeiffer and Robert De Niro, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just watched it like 3 days ago.
Claire
I
Danes
love that
too,
movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
That's Matthew Vaughn's second flick.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Claire Danes had a kid and dropped out of acting, if I recall correctly. I don't know, but
Tyler Reynolds says Stardust was a better movie than a book.
He's right.
And then of course Rob Patey says American Gods.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Oh, and Good Omens also was recently. He co-wrote that with Terry Pratchett. Yeah.
There's good stuff out there. It's just this was not it. If you guys out there in the Cult Pop land like this book, please email us at cultpopgo@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought. If you thought we all have terrible opinions, please yell at us. You can catch me on Twitter at JDsHeroComplex. You can come to my shop, JD's Hero Complex, 4327 Main Street in Philadelphia. If you want to help the show out, you can go to patreon.com/JohnnyDestructo and give us some of your money. If you don't have any of that money, if you're like me and don't have money, you can go and help the show out. If you just want to like, share, subscribe, do all the things that you do on social media to get the word out, help us get some views and clicks and, reach a wider audience to come hang out with us. Brandon says, since we're wrapping up, I just want to say it was great having Pink on. She added a cool perspective to the dynamic of the group. So, Len, where can we find you?
Hey, you can holler at me at every place, Black Tribbles, at Black Tribbles, or at the Bat Tribble on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Holler at a Tribble. Please, please, please. And everybody be good. And it was great having you on, Pink. You were fantastic.
Thank you.
Brian, where can people find you?
Hey, I'm at BrianLeaveDesign.com. And, just if you hire a private investigator or something, I'm sure they could track me down. Pink, great to have you.
Thank you.
Now 3 people have said it, so anyone that doesn't say it is a real jerk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey!
God.
I missed everything. What were you guys talking about?
Welcome to the show, Noel.
JD was trying to convince people to finger bang his like button.
If you could enact violence on that like button, it'll help us all. You guys can find me here on the social medias, on the Facebook page, on YouTube. I'll try and be more consistent with videos, and on Twitter at Mr. Bartocci, MrBartocci. Thanks.
Nice. I removed her. There we go. Pink.
Oh God.
It's disconcerting, isn't it? When you're just looking at yourself and talking.
I don't exist on social media. I've got a streaming thing, but it's not ready yet. So, yeah, I just pretty much whenever I show up here is it. So.
All right. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. So somebody, Action Figure Expert says, what? No gutter talk this week? Sorry, we are out of time. I have to go run the store. I am at work literally right now. So hopefully next week we will have a gutter talk segment.
Yes.
And if anybody has any graphic novel recommendations for our book club, the last Sunday of next month, let us know what you want us to read so we can talk about it. Hopefully we will enjoy it more than this.
Which is October, the end of October. So
Make
maybe
it spooky.
people had a what's that?
Make it spooky. Make it spooky.
Yeah, and good.
Something spooky.
So Len loves horror books.
Yeah.
Says it every single week. Loves horror books. The grodier, the better. Loves horror books. Len horror tribble. It's the thing.
The body horror in there, yeah.
Yeah, just bleh, mangled. Bleh.
And Brandon, who's behind the scenes with us, says, comment, please. It's another thing you can do to help the show.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys, we love you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we will talk at you later.
CultPop.